Racist cops overlook black woman's loyal service dog, but then he saves them all. The intersection was busy with the usual mid-afternoon traffic as Officer James Mercer pulled his patrol car to the curb, his partner Frank Daniels already reaching for the door handle. Sweat beaded on James's forehead despite the October chill. Something felt off about this call. "Ma'am, step away from the dog." Frank's voice boomed across the sidewalk as he approached the slender black woman standing outside the convenience store, a large German shepherd at her side. Vanessa Washington didn't move. Couldn't move. The service vest on her dog Titan was bright red against his dark fur, impossible to miss unless you weren't looking. But these officers weren't looking not at the vest, not at her disability placard, not at anything except her skin and a dog they decided was dangerous. "He's my service animal," she called, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "He's trained and registered." James stepped forward, hand hovering near his holster. "Ma'am, we've had reports of an aggressive dog matching this description. I need you to secure the animal." Titan sat perfectly still beside Vanessa, his training evident in every line of his body. The crowd gathering on the sidewalk murmured, smartphones appearing to record the confrontation. Vanessa felt her chest tighten. "Not now, not a panic attack, not here." "Please," she whispered, reaching for her medical ID. "I need him." That's when they heard the first explosion. 3 weeks earlier, Vanessa had moved to Millfield with reluctance and hope battling in her heart. After 27 years in Chicago, relocating to this small town wasn't her idea, but her daughter Maya's medical residency at Millfield General had brought them here, and after Vanessa's accident last year, being close to family wasn't optional anymore. "Mom, just give it a chance," Maya said, helping Vanessa unpack boxes in the modest bungalow they'd rented on Sycamore Street. "Small towns have their charms." "Small towns have small minds," Vanessa countered, wincing as pain shot through her hip. The car accident had left her with nerve damage, chronic pain, and the PTSD that brought on debilitating panic attacks. Only Titan, the service dog she'd trained with for 6 months, made it possible for her to function independently. Maya sighed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "It's not 1985 anymore. People have evolved." "Some have," Vanessa conceded, rubbing Titan's ears as he pressed against her leg, sensing her discomfort. At 4 years old, the German shepherd was her lifeline, trained to detect oncoming panic attacks, provide pressure therapy, and even retrieve her medication when needed. Their first week passed uneventfully. Vanessa set up her home office. She worked remotely as a graphic designer and established a routine. Morning walks with Titan through Parkside Trail, coffee at Maggie's Diner where the elderly owner had immediately put up a service animals welcome sign after meeting them, and afternoons working while Titan rested nearby. It was during their second week when Vanessa first encountered Officer James Mercer. She was leaving the pharmacy, Titan walking perfectly at heel, when she noticed the police cruiser slowing beside her. The window rolled down, revealing a 40-something white officer with close-cropped hair graying at the temples. "Ma'am, is that dog leashed?" he called out, eyes narrowing. Vanessa felt the familiar tightening in her chest. "He's a service animal, officer. Under ADA regulations, he's working and doesn't require a leash if it interferes with his duties." The officer, Mercer, according to his nameplate, frowned. "We've had complaints about loose dogs in the neighborhood. Just make sure he stays under control." As he drove away, Vanessa released the breath she'd been holding. Titan pressed against her leg, sensing her anxiety, and she dropped her hand to his fur. "It's okay, boy, we're okay." But they weren't okay. Over the next 2 weeks, Vanessa noticed patrol cars driving past her house with unusual frequency. At the grocery store, she felt eyes following her. And twice more, Officer Mercer stopped her to question her about Titan. "It's like they've never seen a black woman with a service dog before," she complained to Maya over Sunday dinner. "The same officer has stopped me 3 times now." Maya looked concerned. "Have you documented these interactions? Maybe we should file a complaint and make myself an even bigger target." Vanessa shook her head. "I didn't move to Millfield to become its civil rights crusader." "Then what will you do?" Maya asked, passing the mashed potatoes. Vanessa scratched Titan behind the ears as he lay vigilantly at her feet. "What I've always done. Keep my head down, follow the rules, and hope people eventually see past their preconceptions." But the universe had other plans. The next morning, Vanessa took Titan to the dog park's special early hours reserved for service animals. There were only 2 others there, an elderly man named Howard with his guide dog, a Labrador named Scout, and a middle-aged woman named Patricia with her seizure-alert dog, a border collie mix. "You're new," Howard observed, his milky eyes turned in Vanessa's general direction. I'm Howard Chambers, been blind since '79, Nam. Vanessa Washington, she replied, warming to his direct approach. Moved here from Chicago last month. Chicago? Patricia exclaimed. Lord, I miss civilization. 30 years in this town, and I'm still considered an outsider because my people came from Kentucky instead of founding the place. Vanessa laughed, feeling herself relax for the first time in weeks. They talked as their dogs played within the careful boundaries of their training, and she learned that Howard had been fighting for service animal awareness in Millfield for decades. The police are the worst, Patricia confided. Especially that Officer Mercer. He's stopped me at least once a month for 3 years, always asking about Bella's certification. Howard nodded. His partner Daniels is no better, military types who came back from overseas with their prejudices reinforced rather than challenged. But why? Vanessa asked. Surely they've been educated about service animals. Education doesn't always overcome bias, Howard said softly. Mercer lost his younger brother to a dog attack when they were kids, and Daniels, he hesitated. Well, Frank Daniels has made his views on who belongs in Millfield pretty clear over the years. The conversation left Vanessa unsettled. That evening, she researched the Millfield Police Department, finding nothing officially concerning but plenty of community forum complaints about certain officers' treatment of minorities and disabled residents. Great, she muttered to Titan. We've moved to Mayberry with a side of bias. She was considering her options when her phone rang. It was her client Nancy Pearson, the owner of a local construction company. Vanessa, thank goodness you answered. Look, I hate to ask this, but we're in a bind. The promotional materials for the Riverside Development project. We need to reshoot some photos because the city changed the plans. Any chance you could meet me at the site tomorrow? I know it's short notice. The Riverside Development was Millfield's pride and joy, a revitalization project transforming the abandoned factory district into shops, restaurants, and apartments. Vanessa had been designing their marketing materials remotely. I can make that work, she agreed. What time? Around 3, by the old Conway factory building. You know the place? Vanessa didn't, but she'd find it. Titan and I will be there. The next day brought unseasonable warmth for October, and Vanessa dressed lightly for her meeting. The old Conway factory stood near the river, a massive brick structure partially renovated, surrounded by construction equipment. Yellow tape cordoned off areas still under development. Nancy waved from beside a portable office. Vanessa, over here. They spent 30 minutes discussing the project changes, then Nancy led her around the exterior for photos. Titan stayed close, occasionally alert to sounds from the construction but maintaining his training perfectly. Let me show you where the Riverside Promenade will connect, Nancy said, leading them toward the back of the building where it faced the water. It's going to be spectacular when she stopped abruptly. That's odd, the security fence is open. Before Vanessa could respond, Nancy's phone rang. Excuse me, I need to take this. It's the mayor's office. She stepped away, leaving Vanessa and Titan near the open gate. Curious, Vanessa peered through. The area beyond was a concrete loading dock extending over the water, obviously not yet renovated. Construction materials were stacked haphazardly, and something about their arrangement struck her as unusual. Titan suddenly stiffened, a low growl rumbling in his throat. What is it, boy? Vanessa whispered, instantly alert. Titan never growled on duty. The dog's focus was unwavering, fixed on something near the water's edge. Following his gaze, Vanessa noticed a metallic glint beneath a tarp, partially concealed by lumber. Instinct told her to back away, to call Nancy to leave immediately. But before she could move, Titan's growl deepened. A figure emerged from behind the stacked materials, a man in dark clothes, wearing a balaclava despite the warm weather. He froze upon seeing Vanessa. Time suspended for 3 thundering heartbeats. Then the man reached into his jacket. Run! Vanessa screamed, turning to flee as Titan positioned himself between her and the stranger. The sound of tires screeching drew her attention to the street where a police cruiser had just pulled up. Officers Mercer and Daniels emerged, clearly responding to something unrelated to her presence. Help! She called out, waving frantically. There's someone. The officers saw her, then Titan, and their expressions hardened. Daniels immediately reached for his weapon. Control your dog, ma'am, he shouted, misreading the situation entirely. No, you don't understand. Vanessa pointed desperately toward the loading dock. There's a man back there with the first shot rang out from behind her, not from the police but from the loading dock. The masked man had emerged and was firing toward them. Chaos erupted. Mercer shoved Vanessa down behind a concrete barrier while Daniels returned fire. Titan, contrary to every instinct but aligned with his training, stayed beside Vanessa, his body pressed protectively against hers. "Stay down," Mercer commanded, his voice different now, professional, focused. The shooter retreated behind the construction materials. In the momentary lull, Vanessa gasped out, "There's something under that tarp. I think it might be a bomb." Mercer's eyes widened. He spoke rapidly into his radio, calling for backup and evacuation of the surrounding area. "How many did you see?" Daniels demanded, crouched nearby, his earlier antagonism replaced by urgent professionalism. "Just one, but another shot interrupted her, pinging off the barrier inches from Daniels' head. "We need to get you out of here," Mercer said. "When I give the signal, run for the cruiser, we'll cover you." Vanessa nodded, heart hammering. "Tighten heel," she whispered, knowing the dog would stay with her. "Now," Mercer shouted, rising to fire 2 covering shots. Vanessa ran, Titan matching her pace perfectly. She had almost reached the cruiser when she heard Daniels cry out. Turning, she saw him stumble, blood spreading across his thigh where a bullet had found its mark. Mercer was pinned down, unable to reach his partner without exposing himself to fire. Daniels dragged himself toward shelter, but he was in the open, vulnerable. Without hesitation, Titan broke from Vanessa's side the first time he'd ever left her during duty and raced to Daniels. Big Dog positioned himself as a shield, then began dragging the officer by his jacket toward safety, exactly as he'd been trained to help Vanessa during her episodes. "Titan, no!" Vanessa cried, terrified for her dog. Another shot rang out, missing the dog and officer by inches. Then multiple sirens wailed in the distance, backup arriving. The shooter must have realized his time was up. Instead of continuing the attack, he threw something toward the loading dock, a small object that glinted in the sunlight. "Grenade!" Mercer shouted, but it wasn't a grenade. When it struck the tarp, it produced no explosion, only a small flame that quickly began to spread. "The bomb," Vanessa gasped, understanding immediately. "He's triggering it remotely." Mercer's face went ashen. "The evacuation's not complete. There are still people in those buildings." What happened next would later be pieced together from security footage, witness statements, and officer reports. The masked man fled toward a waiting boat on the river. Fire spread rapidly toward whatever was concealed under the tarp. And Officer James Mercer, the same man who had stopped Vanessa 3 times because of Titan, made a decision that defied all protocol. He ran toward the fire. "James, don't!" Daniels shouted from where he lay, still being guarded by Titan. But Mercer was already scaling the fence, determined to either extinguish the fire or move the device, anything to prevent catastrophe. Vanessa watched in horror, knowing he wouldn't make it in time. The flames were too close to the concealed object. Then she felt Titan press against her leg. He had returned to her side, his duty to Daniels complete now that the wounded officer was behind cover. "Titan," she whispered, a desperate idea forming. "Water rescue." It was one of his specialized commands, rarely used but thoroughly trained. Without hesitation, the dog bounded toward the river, bypassing the loading dock entirely and diving into the water. Mercer had reached the fire and was frantically trying to smother it with his jacket, but the flames were too strong, too close to the hidden device. Titan emerged from the water on the dock side, soaking wet. With a precision that spoke to his years of training, he shook himself vigorously beside the fire, sending water spraying across the flames. It wasn't enough to extinguish the fire completely, but it bought precious seconds that allowed Mercer to drag the tarp away, revealing what was beneath. A homemade bomb attached to propane tanks, the sort of device that could destroy half a block. Backup arrived in forced police cars, fire trucks, and a bomb squad. The area was evacuated. The device was carefully disabled, and the shooter's boat was intercepted downriver by harbor patrol. In the chaotic aftermath, Vanessa found herself sitting on the back of an ambulance, a shock blanket around her shoulders. Titan lay at her feet, exhausted but vigilant. Across from her, Officer Daniels was being treated for his gunshot wound, expected to recover fully. And Officer James Mercer stood awkwardly nearby, his uniform singed, his expression unreadable. "Your dog," he finally said, voice rough with emotion. "He saved my partner's life, probably saved mine too." Vanessa nodded, too drained for words. "I owe you both an apology," Mercer continued. I haven't been fair to you since you arrived in town." "Because I'm black?" Vanessa asked directly, too tired for diplomacy. Mercer flinched but didn't deny it. Partly because of the dog. I've had issues with dogs since I was a kid." "I heard," Vanessa said softly, "but that's no excuse for harassment." "No, it's not." He looked directly at her for perhaps the first time. "I was wrong. And I'm sorry. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough for weeks of subtle intimidation and profiling, but it was a start. And in that moment, watching Titan receive gentle praise from the paramedics who had initially given him a wide berth, Vanessa saw the first fragile possibility of change. The following days brought revelations that shook Millfield to its core. The masked man was identified as Walter Gaines, a former city contractor who had been fired after Nancy Pearson's company found irregularities in his work. His planned bombing of the Riverside Development had been an act of revenge, one that would have caused countless deaths if not thwarted. Vanessa found herself reluctantly thrust into the spotlight. Local news wanted interviews. The mayor presented Titan with a ceremonial key to the city. And throughout it all, she observed the subtle shift in how people looked at them, no longer with suspicion, but with something approaching respect. A week after the incident, there was a knock at her door. Officer Mercer stood on her porch out of uniform, holding a paper bag. "May I come in?" he asked, more request than demand. Vanessa hesitated, then stepped aside. Titan, ever vigilant, watched the officer but showed no signs of distress. "I wanted to give you this," Mercer said, placing the bag on her coffee table, "and to talk if you're willing." Inside the bag was a custom-made vest for Titan higher quality than his current one, with reflective strips and clear service animal patches. "The department pooled together," Mercer explained. "It's not enough, not by a long shot, but it's something." Vanessa ran her fingers over the material. "Thank you," she said, genuinely touched despite her lingering wariness. Mercer nodded, then seemed to gather his courage. "My brother was killed by a dog when we were kids," he said abruptly. "A German shepherd, actually. I was 7, he was 5. I was supposed to be watching him." The admission hung in the air between them. "I'm sorry for your loss," Vanessa said carefully, "but Titan is not that dog." "I know that now." Mercer looked at the German shepherd, who had settled at Vanessa's feet. "Your dog showed me what real training looks like, what partnership looks like." The conversation that followed wasn't easy. They spoke of implicit bias, of the weight of history, of the small indignities Vanessa had faced not just in Millfield but throughout her life. Mercer didn't defend himself or make excuses, he simply listened. "The department is implementing new training," he told her as he prepared to leave. "Service animal recognition, cultural sensitivity, it's overdue. Daniels is even leading the charge from his hospital bed, if you can believe it." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Officer Daniels, the same man who nearly shot my dog?" Mercer's smile was tired but genuine. "Near-death experiences have a way of shifting perspectives. He wants to meet with you when you're ready, to thank Titan personally." After he left, Vanessa sat with Titan in her small living room, considering the unexpected turn her life had taken. She had moved to Millfield expecting to endure it, not change it. Yet here she was at the center of a transformation she had never sought. Her phone rang, Maya calling for their daily check-in. "So," her daughter said after hearing the update, "still think small towns can't change?" Vanessa watched Titan, now snoozing peacefully in his bed, the new vest laid out beside him. "The jury's still out," she replied, "but I'm willing to be surprised." The changes came gradually over the following months. Officer Mercer became James, stopping by occasionally to check on them, genuinely, not as surveillance. He brought his nephew once, a boy who trembled at the sight of Titan until the gentle dog showed him how to play an appropriate version of fetch. Officer Daniels Frank took longer to come around. His recovery was complicated by infection, keeping him sidelined for months. But when he finally returned to limited duty, his first community engagement was a presentation at the elementary school about service animals, with Vanessa and Titan as his special guests. "I made assumptions," he admitted to the wide-eyed children. "I saw what I expected to see, not what was actually there, and that kind of thinking can be dangerous." The children asked innocent questions about Titan's training, about Vanessa's disability, about what service dogs could do. One little girl, no more than 6, looked solemnly at Frank's cane. "Is Officer Daniels gonna get a helper dog too?" she asked. The adults exchanged glances, surprised by the question. Frank cleared his throat. "I hadn't thought about it," he admitted, "but it's not a bad idea." In the spring, Millfield held its first Service Animal Awareness Festival in the newly completed Riverside Plaza. Howard and Scout demonstrated guide dog techniques. Patricia and Bella showed how seizure-alert dogs provided advance warning. And Vanessa, still uncomfortable with public speaking but determined to advocate, explained how Titan helped her manage PTSD and chronic pain. "Service animals aren't pets," she told the gathered crowd. "They're medical equipment partners, and for many of us, the difference between independence and isolation." From the back of the crowd, she spotted James and Frank in civilian clothes, listening attentively. Beside Frank sat a yellow Labrador with a training vest, not yet a service dog, but a candidate in training specifically for mobility assistance. After the presentations, Nancy Pearson approached with a proposal. Would Vanessa consider designing a children's book about service animals? The mayor wanted to distribute it in schools countywide. We need to start education early, Nancy explained, before biases have a chance to take root. Vanessa agreed, though the project would mean extending her stay in Millfield, a prospect that no longer filled her with dread. That evening, as she walked Titan through the park where the autumn confrontation had begun, Vanessa reflected on the journey of the past 7 months. The town wasn't perfect. Change never came easily or completely. There were still sidelong glances, still moments of discomfort, but there was progress. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Dinner tonight. Bringing someone special from work. Vanessa smiled. Her daughter had been seeing a fellow resident, taking the same cautious steps toward connection that the town itself was making. We'll be there, she replied, patting Titan's head. Both of us. As if sensing her thoughts, Titan looked up at her with complete trust. He had never doubted his purpose, never questioned his worth. He had simply done what he was trained to do. Stand firm in the face of fear, provide support when needed, and recognize the humanity in everyone, even those who initially failed to see his. Come on, boy, Vanessa said, suddenly eager for the evening ahead, for the future unfolding before them. Let's go home. And in that moment she realized Millfield had indeed become just that, home. Not perfect, but evolving. Not without challenges, but facing them honestly. A place where a black woman and her service dog had arrived as outsiders but would remain by choice, part of the community's ongoing journey toward understanding. Titan trotted happily beside her, his red vest bright against his dark fur, impossible to overlook, just as it had been that first day when officers had chosen not to see it. But now people looked and smiled and nodded with respect. Small changes, vital ones. As they walked down Sycamore Street, the setting sun painted the old houses in warm golden light. From her porch, elderly Mrs. Kavanaugh waved, the same woman who had crossed the street to avoid them in October. Evening, Vanessa, she called. Beautiful night, isn't it? It certainly is, Vanessa agreed and meant it.